The acid rain fell in slow, angry drops, burning small holes in the cracked metal ground. Don walked through it anyway. His boots sank into mud mixed with broken glass as he approached the ruined South Auction Dome. Once, it had been a bright trade center. Now it was a dark maze of damaged stalls, flickering lights, and the smell of rust. Don wasn't a fighter. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't even brave. He just needed a pressure coil for his water machine. That was all. But every trader had told him the same thing. Out of stock. Try somewhere else. That somewhere else led him deeper into the dome, into the place he never wanted to go. He stopped when he reached the old auction floor. Under a broken floodlight, a long metal platform stood with sentient beings lined up like objects. Collars around their necks. ID tags on their skin. Painted numbers like they were merchandise. Don hated this place. But he couldn't walk away. Then he saw them. One stood tall, refusing to look weak. Her skin was deep sapphire blue, shining from the rain that leaked through the ceiling. Her black hair, streaked with silver, clung to her cheekbones. She had sharp teal eyes and a posture that screamed, "Try me. I dare you." Her name tag said Sally. A few steps behind her stood another girl. Smaller, softer, quiet. Her skin was violet lavender, marked by cold exposure. She wore a translucent wrap barely holding together. Her white hair reached her chin, perfectly neat despite everything. She stared at the floor like she was hoping to disappear. Her tag read Yari. They weren't friends. They weren't family. Just two strangers forced into the same lot. A broken speaker buzzed. Lot 72B, two adult females. Sold together or separately. Most buyers didn't even care. A few leaned in, checking prices. Don wasn't supposed to be here. But he couldn't stop staring at them. At Sally's defiance. At Yari's silent fear. At the way both of them seemed like they were holding their breath, waiting for something awful. His chest tightened. The auctioneer noticed him. Interested, human? Both together or one? Don swallowed. He wasn't rich. He wasn't strong. He wasn't ready for this. But he couldn't leave, not after seeing their eyes. He opened his ration ledger, 62 credits. Not enough. He reached into his pack and pulled out the last valuable thing he owned. A charged pre-fall power cell. The auctioneer's eyes widened. That'll do. Transaction complete. Just like that, the two alien girls were registered under his ID. No questions. No warnings. No going back. As Don drove them through the storm in his old crawler, he checked the rear display once. Sally sat stiff, glaring out the window like she was planning escape routes. Yari sat small and quiet, hands shaking in her lap. They didn't speak. He didn't either. He wasn't a rescuer. He wasn't their savior. He was just a man who couldn't walk away. Ahead, the acid rain hit the windshield harder, and the ruined hills stretched into darkness. A world broken by war, greed, and silence. And now he was bringing two strangers into his lonely shelter. Two strangers with no trust, no safety, and no reason to believe in him. But he had made a choice. And choices in this world always came with consequences. The storm had not stopped when Don reached his shelter. Acid mist rolled down the hillside like slow fog. His crawler creaked as he parked it under the metal canopy. For a moment, he sat still, hands gripping the steering wheel. He wondered if he had made a mistake, maybe the biggest one of his life. Then he opened the rear door. Sally stepped out first. She didn't thank him. She didn't even look at him. She scanned the ridge, shoulders tense, eyes sharp like she expected an ambush. Her wet auction shift clung to her skin, and every movement she made looked like she was ready to fight. Yari stepped out next, slow and careful. She held her wrap close to her body, as if she was afraid it might slip. Her eyes never lifted from the ground. Inside, Don said. They hesitated. Then they followed him. The shelter was small and quiet. Metal walls. Old tools. A single heater in the corner. One thin bedroll. It didn't look like a home, but at least it was warm, and it didn't smell like chains. Don grabbed two dry towels. He held one out to Yari. She froze, then took it with both hands, whisper soft. Sally didn't wait. She snatched a towel from the table and started drying her arms with fast, angry movements. I'm not chaining you, Don said, keeping his voice steady. Sally shot him a sharp look. You expect gratitude? She said. You didn't free us, you just changed the roof. Yari flinched at her tone. Don took a slow breath. I don't want anything from you. Not obedience. Not repayment. Sally stared at him like she was trying to figure out what he really wanted. Yari just hugged her towel closer. Don walked to a cabinet and pulled out blankets. He tossed one on the bedroll. There's food in the drawer. Heater's working. You can rest. But rest didn't come for any of them. Sally paced around the room like a trapped wolf, checking corners, testing the door panel, watching Don's hands every time he moved. Yari stayed near the heater, her knees pulled close, blinking slowly as if exhaustion was fighting her body. Don sat at his workbench and pretended to fix a broken filter. But he wasn't fixing anything. He was thinking about the danger he had brought into his own life, about the trouble the scans would cause, about how two women with no options might see him as no different from their last captor. Hours passed. The storm kept pounding the roof. Finally, Yari whispered, her voice trembling but brave. Are we safe here? Don turned to her. Her eyes shimmered in the heater light, wide and scared. Yes, he said. You're safe. Sally scoffed loudly. Safe? With a human who bought us. Don met her gaze. I bought you because leaving you there would have destroyed me. The words surprised even him. Sally looked away. Yari slowly exhaled, like her lungs finally let go of something she'd been holding for days. Night came. Sally stayed awake, arms locked around herself, listening for danger. Yari wrapped herself in the blanket, eyes half closed but still alert. Don lay on the cold floor near the workbench, staring at the ceiling. He didn't sleep. Neither did they. 3 strangers. 1 small room. No trust yet. No peace yet. Only the storm outside. And the storm inside each of them. Morning arrived slowly, hidden behind thick gray clouds. Acid mist slid down the hillside, dripping into the cracks of the shelter's roof. Inside, the air felt heavy, like the silence had weight. Don sat at his workbench, turning a cracked solar coil in his hands. He wasn't fixing it. He was only pretending, stealing glances at the 2 women who still hadn't spoken to each other. Sally sat near the door, knees up, arms crossed, eyes sharp. She wasn't tired. She was watching, studying, waiting. Yari sat closer to the heater, hands folded in her lap. She didn't move much. She didn't speak. But the sadness around her felt louder than any words. Don finally broke the silence. I have extra clothes. Not new. Not perfect. But clean. Yari lifted her head a little. Sally rolled her eyes. You think clothes fix this? She asked, voice cold. No, Don said. But being warm helps. He placed 2 folded sets on the table and stepped away to give them space. Sally snatched hers and went behind the divider. Yari waited. She always waited. Too polite, too scared to take anything first. Don crouched near her, keeping a respectful distance. You can change, he said softly. I won't look. I won't come close. Yari nodded slowly. Then, with shaking hands, she took her set of clothes. A few minutes later, Sally came out wearing the new outfit like it was battle gear. Sleeves rolled, waist tied tight, chin raised. She looked stronger, sharper, still dangerous. Yari stepped out next. She had wrapped her long tunic carefully, making sure nothing showed. Her white hair framed her face gently. The faded auction number still ghosted her collarbone. Don set food on the table, simple rehydrated stew, and sat far away so they could choose freely. Sally ate fast, almost aggressively. Yari ate slowly, pausing between every bite like she wasn't sure she deserved it. After a long silence, Yari whispered, Why, both of us? Don looked up, surprised. Her voice was soft, but her eyes were searching him deeply. You could have taken 1, she said. But you took 2. Why? He thought for a moment. Because I couldn't choose who to leave behind. Yari lowered her head. Not crying, but something close. Most people wouldn't care. I know, Don said. Sally scoffed, but her voice lacked its usual fire. You're going to get yourself killed keeping us. Maybe, Don answered. Before she could reply, a small beep echoed from the wall console. Sally jumped to her feet. What was that? Don hurried to the panel. His face tightened. Iskin ping, he said. Very weak. Government frequency. Someone's checking for energy spikes. Yari's breath trembled. Sally's fists clenched. You said we weren't tagged. You're not, Don said. But they scan the whole region. We need to stay quiet. He dimmed the lights, lowered the heater's output, and rerouted power through an old coil line. The shelter grew colder, darker. What happens if they find us? Yari whispered. Don looked at both of them, jaw tight. Then I protect you, he said. No matter what comes. Sally stared at him for a long moment. She wasn't convinced, but something in her expression softened for the first time. Yari pulled her knees closer, trying not to shake. Don sat between them, listening to the storm outside and the fear inside. He told himself it was fine, that he could handle whatever came next. But in that small, dim room, with danger creeping closer and two frightened strangers depending on him, Don realized something terrifying. He wasn't alone anymore. He couldn't go back to being alone. By the fourth day, the storm outside felt endless. Acid clouds covered the sky like a giant metal lid. The shelter shook every few minutes from the wind. Even the ground seemed tired. Inside, the air felt tighter than before. Sally paced back and forth near the door, her bare feet tapping the metal floor with sharp, angry sounds. She couldn't sit still. She kept checking the hatch, checking the vents, checking the window crack, even though nothing had changed. Yari sat near the small table, hands clasped together. She watched Sally move, then looked away quickly each time. She didn't want to be caught staring. Don noticed everything. He had spent hours preparing for a short trip down the ridge. He needed a signal filter from an old weather station, something to hide their power use better. Without it, the next skin might catch them. I have to go today, he said quietly. Yari's head snapped up. Today? In this storm? Yes. I don't have a choice. Sally stopped pacing. Her teal eyes narrowed. You're going alone? She asked. I have to. If anyone sees either of you, it's over. Sally didn't like that answer. She leaned on the wall, arms crossed tightly. And what if someone sees you? Then I'm just a random scavenger, Don said. Nobody cares about one man wandering around. Yari stood slowly. How long will you be gone? Half a day, Don replied. Maybe less, if the weather is good. The weather had not been good for days. They all knew it. Sally stepped forward. You shouldn't leave us here. Don looked at her, calm and steady. You'll be safe. You know the rules. If the alarm sounds, don't open the hatch. Sally didn't argue further, but her jaw tightened. Yari seemed even smaller suddenly, as if the idea of him stepping outside took away the little safety she'd found. Don grabbed his satchel, water pack, and old rifle. Not for fighting, just for the wild creatures that stalked the ridges. Before opening the hatch, he turned to them one last time. I'm coming back, he said simply. He stepped out into the harsh wind and acid mist. The door sealed behind him with a heavy groan. Suddenly the shelter felt colder. Sally watched the sealed door for a long time. Then she finally said, he shouldn't trust us this much. Yari sat down on the bedroll, pulling her tunic tighter around her shoulders. He trusts because he has no one else, she whispered. They fell into a strange quiet. Sally eventually sat across from Yari, not close, but not far either. You think he wants something from us? Sally asked. No, Yari said softly. I think he wants people who don't hurt him. Sally frowned. That's not how this world works. Yari looked at her, the first time with courage. Then why are you still here? Sally opened her mouth to bite back a reply, then stopped. Truth stung her silence. She could have run away the second Dawn slept the first night. She didn't. Yari continued, her voice steadying. You don't want to go back out there either. Sally looked away sharply. I don't trust you. I don't trust you either, Yari admitted. But maybe we can survive without fighting. Sally didn't answer. Hours later, the outer alarm gave a single low beep, a sign Dawn had crossed back into the perimeter. Both girls stood up at once. The hatch opened, and Dawn stumbled inside, soaked, exhausted, and with a deep scrape across his arm. But he held a small metal device in his hand. Got it, he breathed. He was hurt, but alive. Before he could sit down, Sally grabbed the medkit without a word. Yari rushed to heat water and bring him a cloth. Dawn blinked in surprise as Sally cleaned his wound with careful hands. Yari hovered close, offering quiet comfort. For the first time, the space between them wasn't filled with fear, but something new, something almost like concern. That night, as he lay near the heater with his arm bandaged, Dawn realized something. They were no longer three strangers forced into the same room. They were acting like people who needed each other, even if none of them were ready to say it out loud. By the fifth day, the storm outside had turned the whole ridge into a cold, toxic swamp. The sky glowed a rusty red, and the wind howled like something alive. No sunlight, no breaks, no calm. Inside the shelter, the danger changed shape. It wasn't the weather anymore. It was pressure. 3 people stuck in one small room, each carrying fear, pain, and memories they never spoke about. Sally grew restless. too restless. She touched every tool on Dawn's shelves. She folded blankets, then unfolded them. She walked in circles, muttering under her breath about being trapped. She even moved Dawn's carefully organized filter parts into a new order that made no sense. Dawn said nothing, but he noticed everything. Yari changed too. She became quieter than ever. She cooked, cleaned, adjusted the heater, but avoided Sally completely. Her shoulders stayed tight. Her eyes stayed lowered. Every time Dawn looked her way, she tried to smile, but it never reached her eyes. One night, Dawn finally cooked a real meal: grain mash, root slices, and a little spice he'd been saving. He hoped warmth might calm things. It didn't. As soon as he set the bowls on the table, Sally spoke first. "This isn't going to work," she said sharply. Dawn paused. "What do you mean?" She leaned forward, elbows on the table. 3 broken people in one shelter. 2 women who don't trust anything. 1 human who thinks kindness fixes the world. This ends badly. Yari stiffened but didn't speak. Dawn kept his voice calm. "I didn't ask anything from either of you." "That's the problem," Sally shot back. "You act like we're normal. Like we're just people. We're not. We're running. We're scared. We're angry." Her voice cracked at the last word, but she hit it quickly. Yari finally lifted her head. "He doesn't treat us like property." Sally turned sharply. "I never said he did." "But you act like he's lying to you," Yari whispered. Sally glared. "And you act like you're afraid he'll stop caring." Yari flinched as if struck. Dawn stood up suddenly. "That's enough." The room froze. He rarely raised his voice. Even now, he didn't shout, but the tone cut through the tension like a blade. "I didn't bring either of you here to compete," he said. "Not for space. Not for safety. Not for me." Sally looked away. Yari looked down. He continued, slower but firm. "You're both free to stay. You're both free to walk out that door. But I won't let fear turn this place into another prison." Silence wrapped around them like cold air. Sally broke it first. "You think this is about safety? It's not. It's about meaning. I've never belonged anywhere. Not really. Every time I tried, someone took everything from me." Her voice lowered. "I don't know how to stop fighting." Yari stepped toward her, small, quiet, but brave. "I'm not trying to replace you," she said softly. "And I'm not trying to make him choose." Sally stared at her, confused. "I just want peace," Yari continued. "Not to be alone again. Not to watch someone else walk away." Dawn stepped closer then. He did something simple. Something gentle. He took Sally's hand in one of his, and Yari's hand in the other. Both women froze. "I see both of you," he said quietly. "I don't want to own you. I don't want to fix you. I just want to protect you, if you'll let me." Neither woman pulled away. Neither spoke. But neither let go. Later that night, the 3 of them lay on their bedrolls. Dawn in the middle, Sally on one side, Yari on the other. They weren't touching. Not yet. But they were closer. Not fighting. Not running. Just breathing the same warm air, listening to the storm hiss outside, realizing that for the first time in a long time, they weren't surviving alone anymore. The next night, something went wrong. It started with a soft flicker, barely noticeable. Then the heater light dimmed, brightened, and died with a hard click. The shelter fell into cold, dark silence. A single emergency coil hummed overhead, glowing a weak red. Dawn shot to his feet instantly. "That's not normal," he muttered. Sally stiffened. Yari's breath hitched. Dawn tapped the control panel. No response. He pressed harder. Nothing. "The power core dropped," he said, voice tight. "Backup won't last long." "How long?" Sally demanded. "Maybe 2 hours, maybe less." The cold crept in fast. The walls, already thin, sucked heat out of the air like hungry metal. Breath turned white. Yari hugged her arms around herself, teeth chattering. Dawn dropped to the floor and tore open the power access panel. He pushed aside wires and old circuits with shaking fingers. "It's the reroute I installed," he said. "Too much strain. I can fix it. I just need time." Sally stared at the heater, now dark and silent. "We don't have time," she said. "This place freezes fast." "We will manage," Dawn insisted. His voice was calm, but his hands were trembling from the cold already. Yari stepped forward, kneeling beside him. "You need to work," she whispered. "Let us handle the rest." She stood and pulled blankets into the corner near the emergency coil, building a small nest of warmth. Sally watched her, hesitating. "What are you doing?" "Sharing heat," Yari said. "If we don't, none of us will stay warm enough." Sally let out a frustrated breath. This is stupid. But her arms were wrapped around her body so tightly that her knuckles turned pale. She felt the cold even if she wouldn't admit it. Yari crawled under the blanket pile. Her voice trembled. Please, just until he finishes. Don looked up from the wires. She's right, he said. Go. I'll work faster knowing you two aren't freezing. Sally hesitated another moment, then stepped toward them. She slid into the blankets beside Yari with a long exhale she didn't mean to let out. Don returned to the wiring, working as fast as his cold fingers allowed. Minutes stretched. The shelter grew colder. The emergency coil faded from red to orange. Yari peeked toward Don. Are you cold? He didn't answer. His jaw was clenched too tightly. Sally cursed under her breath, shoved aside a blanket, and called out. Human, get over here. I can't, he said. If I stop now. You're turning blue, Sally snapped. 1 minute won't kill the wires. Yari reached out her hand toward him hesitantly. Please sit with us. Just for a moment. Don realized they were right. His hands were numb. He couldn't fix anything like this. He crawled over and sat between them, wrapped in the blankets. Warmth hit him slowly. Not enough, but better than the freezing air. Sally hugged her knees, pretending she wasn't shaking. Yari leaned slightly toward Don, offering quiet warmth. You're going to fix it, Yari whispered. She said it like a fact, not hope. Don breathed out, a small cloud of fog. I will. Sally smirked weakly. You better. I didn't survive all this just to freeze in your tiny bunker. Despite everything, Don almost smiled. A minute later, he returned to the wires, warmer, focused, determined. Yari and Sally huddled together, wrapped in blankets, watching him from the dim corner. For once, they weren't arguing. For once, they weren't avoiding each other. They were simply surviving side by side. As Don worked, Yari whispered so softly only Sally could hear. He's not leaving us. Sally didn't answer, but she didn't deny it. And that was the first time she didn't push the truth away. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, 3 lonely souls fought back against the cold, together. Not because they trusted each other completely, but because staying alive meant staying close. And for the first time, none of them ran from that idea. The power came back just before dawn. It started as a faint hum under the floor, low, fragile, almost like the shelter was breathing again. Then a soft glow filled the room as the heater flickered on and the lights shimmered back to life. Warmth spread slowly through the metal walls. Don slumped back from the panel, exhausted, hands raw, eyes heavy. He had worked through the whole night, stopping only when his fingers went numb, then pushing forward again. He looked over to the blanket pile. Sally and Yari had fallen asleep, leaning against each other for warmth. Sally's arm was draped across Yari's shoulder, and Yari's cheek rested lightly on Sally's arm. Neither of them seemed to notice. Don stood quietly, watching them for a long moment. Something had changed. Not because he saved them, not because he bought them, but because in the cold darkness, when everything could have gone wrong, they chose to survive together. Later that morning, they shared warm broth around the table. The tension that once filled every corner was softer now, almost gone. Sally stretched her arms, rolling her shoulders. So, we didn't die, she said with a half smirk. Yari smiled gently. Because he fixed everything. Don shook his head. Because we stayed close. All of us. They exchanged a glance, one that didn't carry fear anymore. Hours passed quietly. The storm eased. The shelter felt different, still small, still worn down, but no longer lonely. When the sun finally broke through the clouds, weak but golden, it filtered through a small vent Don had repaired days ago. Real sunlight touched the floor. Yari was the first to notice. She walked into the light slowly, lifting her face toward it. Her violet skin glowed softly, and her eyes closed in a calm, peaceful breath. Sally stepped beside her, squinting. Feels strange, she said. Feels good, Yari whispered. Don watched them, arms folded, a quiet smile on his face. He hadn't seen sunlight in weeks either, but somehow seeing them stand in it meant more. Later, as evening came, Don sat on the edge of his workbench and finally said the words he had been avoiding. You don't have to stay here, he said softly. Either of you. Both women turned to him. I don't want you staying because you feel trapped, or grateful, or scared to leave. Silence. Then Yari stepped forward, eyes steady. Do you want us to go? No, Don answered honestly. Sally crossed her arms, studying him like she was trying to read his heartbeat. Then why say it? Because staying should be your choice, Don said. Not something forced by storms or fear. Yari moved closer. If we stay, will you still protect us? Yes. And if both of us stay? Sally asked quietly. Don nodded. I'll protect both of you. The air changed gently, like a weight they had all been carrying finally eased. Sally approached him first. Her voice was low, without the sharp edge she always used to hide behind. I don't want to run anymore, she said. Not from this place, and not from you. Yari stood beside her. I don't want to be chosen over her. I don't want her pushed away because of me. She took a small breath. But I don't want to lose you either. Don looked at both of them. You don't have to choose between each other, he said. You can choose with each other. The storm outside had finally faded. The danger was not gone forever, but for now, they were safe. The three of them stood together under the soft heater light, the shelter warm again, their breath steady. Two alien girls once marked by fear and ownership. One human who claimed he wasn't a hero. And a new life forming between them, built on choice, trust, and survival side by side. As night fell, the world outside remained broken. But inside the small shelter on the hill, something whole began to grow. A bond. A future. A family they chose for themselves.